Hi, folks. John Adamson with See No Evil. Today is February 1st, 2021. We have already expired 1 month in this year. Just amazing. Well, we're going to continue the reading of the 1776 Project Report because this is now lost to Google searches, from what I can tell. Every time I've searched for it, it is now gone. So I'm bringing it to you. And last we left off, we were in section 3. We had just started it. And I just had read a quote from Thomas Paine, who is largely credited with giving the early colonialists, including Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, two of the most notable writers of the Declaration of Independence, their ideas and thoughts on independence from Great Britain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reread his quote from Thomas Paine, and then I'll continue with section 3. For as in absolute governments the king is law, so in free countries the law ought to be king, and there ought to be no other. But lest any ill use should afterwards arise, let the crown at the conclusion of the ceremony be demolished and scattered among the people whose right it is. He's calling for democracy. He's calling for rule by the people, not rule by one person. He's saying that a king, and when you have a king, the king is the law. But the law ought to be king. And that's really where our country is founded upon. The law is meant to be the king. So let's continue with the writing of this report. To assure such a government, Americans demanded a written legal document that would create both a structure and a process for securing their rights and liberties to spell out the divisions and limits of the powers of government. That legal document must be above ordinary legislation and day-to-day politics. That is what the founders meant by a constitution and why our constitution is the supreme law of the land. So they had to make the Constitution, the governing law of our land, not easy to be changed, depending on the whim of the current political situation, which was smart on their behalf. Their first attempt at a form of government, the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, was adopted in the midst of the Revolutionary War and was not ratified until 1781. And of course, the war ended shortly after that. During that time, American statesmen and citizens alike concluded that the Articles were too weak to fulfill a government's core functions. This consensus produced the Constitutional Convention of 1787, which met in Philadelphia, which, as you'll remember, if you remember American history, was our first national capital. So met in Philadelphia of the summer of 1787 to write the document which we have today. It is a testament to those framers' wisdom and skill that the Constitution they produced remains the longest continually operating written constitution in all of human history. That says something. And it says that there obviously was a lot of wisdom behind it, foundational principles that have been recognized for more than a couple centuries to have lasted that long. And it's worth our study. So let's continue. The meaning and purpose of the Constitution of 1787, however, cannot be understood without recourse to the principles of the Declaration of Independence. So they're saying that these documents must go together. Human equality, the requirement for government by consent, and the securing of natural rights, which the Constitution is intended to embody, protect, and nurture. So the Constitution is meant to hold those foundational principles carefully and protect them and encourage them. Lincoln famously described the principles of the Declaration, borrowing from Proverbs 25:11, as an apple of gold, and the Constitution as a frame of silver meant to adorn and preserve the apple. The latter meaning the Constitution, was made for the former, the Declaration of Independence, and not the reverse. The form of the new government that the Constitution delineates is informed in part by the charges the Declaration levels at the British Crown. For instance, the colonists charged the British king with failing to provide, or even interfering with, representative government, taxation without representation, for example. Hence, the Constitution provides for a representative legislature. It also charges the king with concentrating executive, legislative, and judicial power into the same hands, which James Madison pronounced the very definition of tyranny. You've heard the phrase judge, jury, and executioner. Well, that's how the king was acting. And the original framers of our Constitution were saying that's not appropriate. You can't put all that power in one person's hand. Instead, the founders organized their new government into three co-equal branches, checking and balancing the power of each against the other to reduce the risk of abuse of power. The intent of the framers of the Constitution was to construct a government that would be sufficiently strong to perform those essential tasks that only a government can perform. So here are the governmental tasks, such as establishing justice, ensuring domestic tranquility, peace, providing for a common defense, army or military, and promoting the general welfare, the main tasks named in the document's preamble, but not so strong as to jeopardize the people's liberties. In other words, the new government needed to be strong enough to have the power to secure rights without having so much power as to enable or encourage it to infringe rights. More specifically, the framers intended the new Constitution to keep the 13 states united, to prevent the breakup of the Union into two or more smaller countries, while maintaining sufficient latitude and liberty for the individual states. You know, I feel like stopping there today. I'm not feeling entirely 100% today, so I'm going to be heading home soon. But I just want to encourage you to remember the three questions. What are the three questions? These are the charges against this document by the left. Is this racist? 1. Is it historically inaccurate? 2. Is it 3. hard to understand? Those are the three things that this document has had charges against it leveled. So the question to you is, are their charges appropriate? And as I've pointed out along the way, I don't believe so. Anyway, hope you're having a great day. Take care. God bless.